with a housing crisis most agree needs urgent fixing, Labor's solution, at least in part, has been blocked in the Senate and won't see the light of day for another 3 months. What is the solution? Shadow Housing Minister Michael Sukkar joins me to fix the whole housing problem in Australia, I'm sure. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Tom.
Is it a housing crisis? And if so, what's going wrong specifically? What's broken about it?
Well, there is no doubt a housing crisis. I mean, what we've seen, particularly since this government's been in office, is lower housing approvals, lower numbers of houses being built, first home buyers down and rents up. At the same time, we've seen the government drastically increasing migration. So I can tell you, I'm someone who absolutely supports a planned migration system, but you can't propose to drastically increase the number of migrants we're bringing to Australia without any clue about where they're going to live. And that's what we're partly seeing with vacancy rates being so low with rental markets around the country. And the answer from the Labor government is when we say, how are you going to house 1.5 million migrants over the next 5 years? They say, we're setting up our fund, which will build 30,000 over that 5-year period. You don't need to be a maths genius to work out that they're not fed income about doing what's necessary to ensure that there's the number of houses for the drastic increase in migration that they're proposing.
That's the social and affordable, so most of the market's always going to be private. What do you think on social and affordable housing, though? Is more needed? And if so, what's your alternative to what Labor's putting up?
Well, social and affordable housing, even what we saw from the Labor Party on the weekend, you need to identify the projects. What are the projects? Where is the land? Who are you partnering? Who's building them? How are they being funded? Now, what we saw
that's the micro, but if they're starting from the macro of we need more, do you agree with that?
Always, with a growing population, you always need more social and affordable homes. Absolutely. We've got a growing population. Of course you need more.
More per capita or just keeping in line?
Well, you need to ensure that you're keeping up with the demand. Now, we've seen in all of the jurisdictions, particularly even in my home state of Victoria, wait lists for social and affordable housing are longer than ever. We've had a long-term Labor government in Victoria. So there's no doubt that there's a problem there. But I get back to the point I was making. Even the announcement on the weekend of an additional $2 billion, it was obviously a rushed announcement. It was obviously done in order to try and placate the Greens to get their support in the Senate. But unless you identify the projects, what is actually being built, I fear that $2 billion will just end up being subsumed into state and territory housing budgets. There won't be any additional housing. It'll just be business as usual, what was already on the agenda for those states and territories without an additional house being built.
Housing's a long-running issue. I'm not going to go into the coalition years. We don't have time for that right now. But is there something
I'm very happy to go into the coalition.
My point is it's a slow-building issue. Labor didn't come in and then overnight we had a crisis. Is there something broken about the approvals and the levels of government 3? I mean, would you like to figure out a way where councils are no longer part of the hold-up? Are they the red tape? Do you know what I mean? Like these 3 levels, is that never going to be a good process?
Look, there's the one area I think where there's absolute, unanimous view is that clearly planning and zoning, and when I was housing minister, I spoke about it a lot, and I wasn't particularly popular with state and territory housing ministers when I would say this, but there's clearly a huge problem with the time it takes. But in addition...
But also density and just getting NIMBYism, do you see that as a problem?
Well, that's a factor of the same problem. But there's also the taxation burden on housing. So every state government now sees housing as a great place to go and tax. In Victoria, we've got the Labor government in Victoria now putting on an additional, some people have estimated additional $65,000 with their windfall gain tax on every single new lot, typically for first home buyers that will go out the door. Higher land taxes, higher stamp duties. I think, if we're talking about what can the government do, one thing that Julie Collins, the Housing Minister, and the Treasurer, Jim Chalmers, should do is get on the phone to their Labor colleagues in all of the states and say, stop increasing taxing on houses. Because there's analysis that says around, in some jurisdictions, 44% of the cost of a new home are taxes and regulatory charges. It's nearly half. The cost of a new home is the tax take, and they are being ratcheted up by Labor governments around the country. So I don't know why the federal Labor government can't get on the phone and start trying to address
One of the other proposals around accessing super to buy your first home. You took to the last election, you're going to take it again. We'll see what form. It's interesting though, because everyone gets access on, the day it comes in one day, July 1 of whatever year. Everyone eligible is suddenly getting access. How many people would that be? Are we talking about hundreds of thousands, millions that would suddenly be in that market?
Well, there's no doubt it would be tens of thousands. It wouldn't all be in one go.
Not six. It wouldn't be in one go?
No, it wouldn't be. For a whole host of reasons, but there would be
they'd all be eligible.
There'd be a chunk of people who become eligible. Absolutely, that's the whole point.
Yeah, you're not saying you stagger it in. The whole chunk.
I'm not suggesting it's a small policy. It's a significant policy. I mean, one of the biggest barriers for first home buyers to get into the market is that deposit hurdle. And what we see, particularly in a market that's rising, is on day one you think you need to save a certain amount to buy a home, but as the market continues to grow, you get further and further away. Yeah. So the way to break that is through that, to help with the deposit hurdle. We think superannuation money is your money. It belongs to Australians. And there's nothing more infuriating in speaking to first home buyers or prospective first home buyers that I speak to. When you're madly trying to get your deposit together, you've got a lot of your own money locked away that could be used to help you buy your first home.
And the question's around how many people get on that day.
It would be significant. It would be tens of thousands. And we are glad that it's significant because it would significantly help a lot.
We'll delve into it again. I'm getting the wrap.
Fair enough.
So I've got to go.
Good on you, Tom.
Not my fault. Michael Sukkar.
No worries,
thank you.